There's a moment in Mesut Özil's life when the world stopped seeing him as the elegant genius who made football look effortless and began seeing him as a symbol of controversy, isolation, and misunderstanding. It happened in 2018 when a single photograph with the president of Turkey unleashed a political storm that tore through his career. Overnight, one of Germany's greatest playmakers went from national hero to national scapegoat. He stood in front of cameras, voice shaking, as he declared he no longer felt wanted by the country he had represented with pride. In that moment, the man who built his career on vision suddenly found himself blinded by the world's judgment. Ozil wasn't walking away from Germany. Germany had already walked away from him. Mesut Özil was born in Gelsenkirchen, Germany, into a Turkish immigrant family that carried the weight of two identities and belonged fully to neither. His father worked long shifts in the mines and at factories, exhausted but determined to give his children a life better than the one he had known. His mother held the family together with warmth and discipline, making sure her children understood both where they came from and how hard they needed to work to stay afloat. But growing up between cultures came at a cost. Ozil was too German for some, too Turkish for others. He felt the sting of exclusion early, teachers doubting him, classmates mocking him, society subtly reminding him that his name, his face, his heritage made him different. Those moments tightened something inside him, pushing him inward, sharpening his focus on the only place where he truly felt understood, the football pitch. At the local cages and concrete courts, he played with a soft touch that contrasted with the harsh surroundings. While other kids relied on strength, Ozil relied on vision. Threading passes into gaps no one else saw, gliding between defenders with a quiet intelligence that felt almost unreal for his age. Football became his refuge, his language, his escape from a world that made him feel like an outsider. Money was tight, opportunities were rare, but Ozil carried a calm determination. He didn't shout, he didn't demand attention. He simply let the ball speak for him. And slowly, quietly, it began telling a story the world would soon be forced to hear. Ozil's talent didn't burst onto the scene with noise. It revealed itself in silence. While other young players fought with strength or speed, Mesut played as if he were watching the game from above, seeing angles no one else could. At Schalke's youth academy, coaches were stunned by how he manipulated space, how he drifted into pockets unnoticed, how he released passes a fraction of a second before defenders realized danger was coming, how he slowed the game down without ever losing control of it. But his quiet brilliance was often mistaken for weakness. Some coaches said he didn't run enough. Some teammates said he wasn't aggressive enough. Some doubted whether someone so calm could survive German football's intensity. Yet every session, Özil answered without a word. His left foot did the talking. The moment that changed everything came during a youth match where he dismantled an entire defense with a single sequence, drawing three players toward him, slipping between them with a soft touch, and delivering a pass so perfectly weighted that the striker didn't need to break stride. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was genius. Coaches watching from the sideline exchanged looks. They knew what they had just witnessed. Schalke promoted him to the first team soon after. Suddenly, the quiet boy who often felt invisible was being noticed by the entire country. Newspapers wrote about his elegance. Scouts circled. Rivals whispered that Schalke had uncovered a prodigy. The world didn't fully understand him yet, but the ball did, and that connection was about to take him far beyond the streets of Gelsenkirchen. Even as Özil rose through Schalke's ranks, the early setbacks came quickly. For the first time in his life, football wasn't just a refuge. It was a battlefield of expectations, egos, and politics. His calm demeanor was misread as passivity. His intelligence was misinterpreted as softness. And in a club culture that valued physicality and aggression, Özil stood out in ways that didn't always work in his favor. The pressure intensified when contract negotiations became public. Schalke wanted control. Ozil wanted opportunity. And instead of being treated like the emerging talent he was, he found himself pushed aside, criticized by management, and benched for refusing to accept an unfair deal. For a young player who had never been outspoken, the confrontation left him shaken. and for the first time, unwanted. Off the pitch, things weren't easier. His family depended on him emotionally and financially. He carried their sacrifices like weight on his shoulders. He didn't grow up dreaming of fame. He grew up dreaming of stability. And now that dream seemed to be slipping through his fingers. Then came heartbreak. Schalke, the club that had raised him, let him go. For Özil, it felt like a betrayal. The place where he found belonging suddenly cast him out. But it was also the moment that forced him to evolve, forced him to sharpen his resolve, forced him to realize that the world wasn't going to open its doors just because he had talent. Moving to Werder Bremen, Özil arrived with something he had never felt so intensely: doubt. Would he succeed? Was he strong enough? Was he really built for the highest level? But inside that doubt, something else was growing. A fire. A need to prove Schalke wrong. A need to prove Germany wrong. A need to prove himself right. The pain of rejection didn't break him. It pushed him toward the breakthrough waiting on the horizon. Özil's breakthrough came the moment he stepped onto the pitch for Werder Bremen, a club that didn't try to change him, tame him, or force him into a mold he didn't fit. Instead, they handed him the keys to the midfield and said, "Create." And Mesut did exactly that. He lit up the Bundesliga with a calm, almost effortless brilliance. The passes that Schalke dismissed as too risky became weapons. The quiet style they labeled soft became elegance. The vision they underestimated became his superpower. In Bremen, Özil wasn't just good, he was transformative. He dominated matches without shouting. He dictated tempo without rushing. He dismantled defenses without breaking sweat. Then came the moment that changed everything. In the 2009-2010 season, Özil delivered a performance against Bayern Munich that left Germany breathless. He floated between lines, manipulated space, and delivered a series of passes that felt like illusions. Bayern players chased shadows. Analysts struggled to describe what they had witnessed, and scouts across Europe scribbled one name over and over: Mesut Özil. But his true explosion came on the international stage. At the 2010 World Cup, Özil became a global revelation. He tormented Australia. He dismantled England. He embarrassed Argentina. With every game, his stardom grew. His pass to Khedira against Ghana, his lobbed assist against England, his fearless creativity, all of it stunned viewers who had never seen a playmaker so young control matches with such intelligence. Germany didn't just play through him, they revolved around him. After the tournament, there was no debate left. Özil wasn't a talent anymore. He was a phenomenon. Real Madrid came calling, and not quietly. Jose Mourinho personally demanded him. Spanish newspapers celebrated him before he even arrived. Madrid fans expected magic, and Mesut delivered. In his first season, he led La Liga in assists. In his second, he did it again. By his third, he was recognized as one of the best creators of his generation. Özil had risen from rejection to world-class superstardom in less than 3 years. The boy who didn't fit in Germany became the man who redefined beauty in football. But with the rise came the seeds of conflict, pressure, politics, and expectations that would eventually collide with the quiet soul behind the effortless genius. At Real Madrid, Mesut Özil reached a level of footballing artistry few players in his generation ever touched. Surrounded by icons sharpened by Jose Mourinho's relentless demands and fueled by the expectations of the world's biggest club, Özil blossomed into a creator whose vision felt almost supernatural. Every touch, every pause, every perfectly weighted pass seemed to bend the game to his will. He became Cristiano Ronaldo's favorite teammate, not because they were close friends, but because Özil fed him chances with a precision that bordered on art. No one in La Liga created more goals during his 3 seasons in Spain. No one made the game look easier. No one delivered beauty with such consistency. But brilliance always comes with shadows. Behind closed doors, Özil battled a pressure he rarely spoke about. Real Madrid demanded the impossible: perfection every week, trophies every season, discipline every second. Özil was introverted, quiet, emotionally sensitive. Madrid was loud, political, merciless, and slowly the world he had built there began to crack. Mourinho pushed him hard, sometimes too hard. In one infamous halftime, he criticized Özil's intensity so harshly that Mesut threw his shirt and said he'd rather not play. The incident exposed a vulnerability he kept hidden, and Mourinho later admitted he was trying to harden a player who felt everything too deeply. Then the board intervened. Madrid needed funds. Arsenal offered a record fee, and Florentino Perez made a decision that stunned the dressing room. Ozil was sold. Ronaldo publicly expressed anger. Teammates were shocked. Fans protested. But the one who felt it most was Mesut himself. He had never wanted to leave. Madrid wasn't just a club, it was the place where his genius had finally been understood. The move to Arsenal was framed as a new beginning. But privately, Ozil felt the wound of rejection all over again. The same feeling that had haunted him since Schalke. The same feeling many children of immigrants learned too young. At Arsenal, he would reach new heights of creativity, but he would also enter the most turbulent chapters of his career. The moments where politics, identity, pressure, and silence would collide in ways that no amount of footballing genius could protect him from. Mesut Ozil's time at Arsenal began as a dream, a record signing, a fan base electrified, a league stunned by his arrival. And at first, he delivered everything they hoped for: creativity, elegance, vision, moments of pure artistry that separated him from every midfielder in England. But as the seasons passed, the dream slowly twisted into one of the most complicated and controversial chapters of his career. The first cracks appeared with the same familiar pattern: expectations. Arsenal wanted him to be the savior. The Premier League demanded intensity he was never built for. Pundits accused him of laziness. Critics misunderstood his quiet nature for apathy. Özil, who had always played football like a pianist plays piano, suddenly found himself judged by metrics that ignored everything that made him great. But the darkest storm came from beyond football. In 2018, a single photograph with the Turkish president ignited a political firestorm in Germany. Özil, the son of Turkish immigrants, suddenly became a lightning rod for debates on identity, loyalty, and nationality. Media attacked him. Politicians condemned him. German fans turned their backs on him. When Germany crashed out of the World Cup, some blamed him personally. The scrutiny was ugly, cruel, dehumanizing. Özil finally broke his silence. "I am German when we win, but an immigrant when we lose." With those words, he walked away from the national team. The same team he had led to a World Cup title only 4 years earlier. But the backlash followed him to Arsenal. Critics questioned his commitment. Managers benched him with vague explanations. Fans argued endlessly about him. Then came the moment that defined the collapse. Arsenal asked him to take a pay cut during the pandemic. Özil refused, not out of greed, but because he wanted transparency in how the money would be used. The club isolated him. He was left out of the Premier League squad. He trained alone. He sat in empty stadiums, watching matches he was not allowed to play, knowing he was being erased in real time. At his lowest point, Özil wasn't battling defenders. He was battling systems, politics, misunderstanding, silence. But through it all, something inside him stayed unbroken. The same quiet strength he carried as a child, the strength to endure, to stay true to himself, to walk away from places that no longer valued him, was about to lead him into the closing chapters of his career and toward a different kind of victory. Ozil's final chapters weren't defined by trophies or headlines. They were defined by a man reclaiming his identity after years of being misunderstood. When he left Arsenal for Fenerbahce, it wasn't just a transfer. It was a homecoming to the culture that shaped him, to the people who embraced him long before Europe knew his name. He was welcomed like a returning hero, greeted by tens of thousands of fans chanting for a player who had carried the weight of two nations on his shoulders. But reality quickly reminded him of the toll his journey had taken. The physical demands caught up. His legs weren't as quick. His body couldn't sustain the brilliance his mind still saw so clearly. Still, Ozil fought. He trained intensely, pushed himself, and tried to deliver moments of the magic that had defined him for so long. But injuries, internal club conflicts, and managerial disagreements made the road uneven. Eventually, he moved to Istanbul Başakşehir, seeking a quieter environment, one where he could play without the noise that had surrounded him his entire career. Yet even there, his body resisted. Years of pressure, expectations, criticism, and emotional strain had taken their toll. The man who once floated across pitches now struggled to stay fit. No amount of vision could compensate for a body asking to rest. And so in 2023, Mesut Özil did something he had never done before. He walked away on his own terms. No scandal, no exile, no fight. Just a quiet announcement from a quiet man, saying it was time to step back and protect his health, his mind, his peace. In retirement, something remarkable happened. Özil smiled more. He spent time with family. He engaged in business ventures. He invested in esports. He lived without the weight of a nation on his chest. For the first time since he was a boy in Gelsenkirchen, Mesut Özil wasn't running from misunderstanding. He wasn't fighting criticism. He wasn't trying to justify his existence on a pitch that demanded perfection. He finally had space to simply be Mesut. Today, Mesut Özil stands as one of the most unique and complicated figures of modern football, a genius celebrated for his vision and condemned for his silence, adored for his artistry and criticized for his individuality. Time has softened the noise around him, allowing the world to see what was always there, a player who redefined creativity and a man who carried more weight on his shoulders than most ever knew. His legacy stretches far beyond statistics or trophies. It lives in every through ball that split defenses like poetry. It lives in the joy on Cristiano Ronaldo's face after another perfect assist. It lives in the imagination he brought to every match, the calm elegance he imposed on chaos, the beauty he created simply by seeing the game differently than everyone else. But his legacy also lives in something deeper, his courage to stand alone. When Germany turned on him, he spoke his truth. When Arsenal isolated him, he refused to compromise his values. When politics and prejudice tried to define him, he chose to walk away rather than betray who he was. Özil never fit the mold. He never chased applause. He never shaped himself for acceptance. And in doing so, he became a symbol, not just for players of immigrant backgrounds, not just for quiet geniuses, but for anyone who has ever felt misunderstood in a world that demands conformity. His story reminds us that greatness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it glides, sometimes it sees beauty where others see nothing. Mesut Özil didn't need to shout to be remembered. His football spoke loudly enough. And long after the noise fades, the vision will remain.